Now we're going to cover court rules, which are the second major source of primary law generated by the judicial branch. Court rules are a major uh, source of primary law that affects the daily life of anyone who practices in a court. If you are a civil litigator or a trial attorney or work in criminal defense or prosecution, court rules are going to govern much of the daily activities. So the court rules are generally the primary law that governing court procedures, how things happen in and around the courtroom. They are generally developed by the judicial branch and then are often endorsed by the legislative branch and incorporated into the state or federal code that way. Here I have an image of the Judicial Conference of the United States, and it is a subset of those of that conference, a subcommittee that generates the various rules that govern procedure in the federal courts. The rules exist at several levels. Rules like the Federal Code of Civil Procedure are generally applicable across the entire court system. You also have rules that are jurisdiction specific, and then you have rules based on a specific cause of action, and then you will have rules based on a specific judge or courthouse. If any of you followed a minor scandal that happened tangentially to the protests downtown at the courthouse, the acting director of Homeland Security released some photos taken within the courthouse. And there is a court rule which has the weight of law prohibiting the posting of those photos. And so he could be found in contempt of court. So you're all familiar with the federal rules of civil procedure, but we'll see that the federal rules cover issues, a lot more issues than just that. There's obviously the federal rules of criminal procedure. There's bankruptcy procedure, appellate procedure, the rules of the Supreme Court, and then, of course, the federal rules of evidence and the federal sentencing guidelines. These are all generated by the courts and governing basically what happens in the court system. So that's what the court rules are. How do we find them? Well, in terms of finding authoritative versions of them, the federal rules are attached to the U.S. Code, both the annotated and unannotated version, and generally they are attached as appendices to the title of the U.S. Code that the court they're assigned to addresses. So if you want to find the rules of procedure for the tax court, you would look at Title 26 and the U.S. Code. So let's take a look at that on the Office of Law Revision Council's website. On the Office of Law Revision Council's website, we get title by title listing of the U.S. Code, and under Title 11, you'll see this tab here for Appendix. If it was on the shelf, it would be just the last volume of the sections on the Title 11. And if we click on that appendix, it will show us the federal rules of bankruptcy procedure, and there we can find the rules. Now, the rules were generated by the bankruptcy courts and the judicial conference, but that they have been included in the code so that all of the primary law is in one place. Now, of course, the court rules are also available on the major legal research platforms. You can find them in a number of places. You could navigate by jurisdiction, but you can also go into the statutes and legislation, which is where they're generally housed, and look for the codes there. Here we see the court rules, and so that's the option we're interested in. And then we here they've got a collection called Federal Rules Annotated. And that'll collect all of the various federal rules of procedure. The federal rules of bankruptcy are listed at the bottom of this list here. And I want to show you real quickly why it's very useful to look at these rules on Lexis or Westlaw, is because they are part of their annotated US code. In looking at Rule 1002, we scroll down and we get the annotations because it's part of their annotated version of the US code. And so you get useful notes, and then you can also shepherdize the document and find all of the cases that have cited to a specific rule. And you can also look at secondary sources, law review articles, ALRs, and other resources this way. So the annotated federal court rules are a very powerful tool on the legal research platforms.